Ukraine is set to present its latest peace proposal to U.S. negotiators, signaling President Volodymyr Zelensky's attempt to balance defending Ukrainian interests and showing Trump that he is willing to make compromises. Zelensky will hand over the proposal just a day before leaders and officials from around 30 countries will gather for talks on Kyiv's efforts to end the war with Russia on acceptable terms. Washington has had its mind set on reaching a swift compromise in hope of ending Russia's full-scale invasion. However, this has left Kyiv with little room to maneuver. The U.S.-authored plan that was presented last month was initially met with widespread criticism for being too weighted towards Russian demands. Ukraine's European allies are now backing Zelensky's efforts to ensure that any settlement is fair, while simultaneously accommodating Europe's defense interests. Meanwhile, Zelensky said his country would be ready to vote within 3 months if partners can guarantee this can happen safely during wartime. Trump has long been calling for an election in Ukraine, claiming Zelensky used the war as an excuse not to stand before voters. Those comments echo similar remarks often made by Moscow to delegitimize the government in Kyiv. In an interview with Euronews morning show Europe Today, U.S. Ambassador to the EU Andrew Posner defended a controversial national security document released last week. The 33-page document suggested excessive regulation, illegal migration and ill-designed economic policies in the EU could lead to the bloc's civilizational decline. Posner stated the document seeks to restore Europe's, quote, greatness and should not be understood as an attack.
And the various comments we've heard across the last couple of days on the national security strategy. Is this a campaign, do you think, Ambassador, to dismantle the European Union?
Well, you know, it's interesting, the coverage of the national security strategy. When I read it, I thought, this thing's going to be terrible. I went and read it, and it's really not that bad. The section on Europe is titled A Proposal for European Greatness. It's not called We Don't Like Europe, We Want Europe to Go Away. And if you read down a little bit, it says that Europe is, I think I'm going to get the quote right, Europe is strategically and culturally vital to the United States. You read a little further, it says our transatlantic trade relationship, which is the largest trade relationship in the world, is a pillar of the global economy and of American prosperity. So I did not read it at all as an attempt to dissolve the European Union.
But does it suggest going back to nation states?
A diplomat who spoke to Euronews said the document has little to do with national security, as it barely mentioned Russia, and instead has a lot to do with political interference. Several European leaders pushed back, arguing that democracy does not need external saving and domestic matters are for the EU to handle alone.
Thailand and Cambodia vowed to continue fighting on Tuesday as renewed border clashes killed at least 13 people and forced tens of thousands to flee. Residents in the disputed border areas began fleeing by the thousands on Monday. The Thai army said almost 500 temporary shelters were set up in 4 border provinces, accommodating over 125,000 people. Cambodia's military said 9 civilians were killed and 20 wounded in the fighting, while Thailand reported 4 soldiers killed and 68 wounded since clashes resumed Sunday night. The latest fighting followed a skirmish that injured 2 Thai soldiers and shattered a ceasefire that ended 5 days of clashes in July over territorial disputes. The fighting left at least 48 people dead on both sides and forced evacuation of more than 300,000 civilians, with Thailand's foreign ministry warning that it will continue its military operations at the border. Cambodian authorities withdrew from the ongoing 33rd Southeast Asian Games in Thailand, citing safety and security concerns.
The daughter of Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her mother's behalf on Wednesday, after officials said Machado would not attend the ceremony. Machado has been in hiding and has not been seen in public since January, when she was briefly detained after joining supporters in a protest in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas.
She wants to live in a free Venezuela, and she will never give up on that purpose. That is why we all know, and I know, that she will be back in Venezuela.
The Nobel Institute awarded Machado the prize for her struggle to achieve a democratic transition in Venezuela. She won an opposition primary election and intended to challenge President Nicolás Maduro in last year's presidential election, but the government barred her from running for office. The lead-up to the election saw widespread repression, including disqualifications, arrests, and human rights violations. UN human rights officials and many independent rights groups have expressed concerns about the situation in Venezuela and called for Maduro to be held accountable for the crackdown on dissent.
This is the view of an expert in the fight against drugs. At the end of the month, Alexis Hosdale will step down as head of the European Union Drugs Agency. For 10 years, he has observed and coordinated European efforts to combat trafficking and support public health initiatives. Over the past decade, Alexis Hosdale has seen the market transform.
Today, drugs are everywhere. Everything can be used or be the object of addictive behavior. And as a consequence, everybody can face personally or indirectly someone who has a problem of acute or chronic addiction. Then the second point is the violence. And here we see that over the last 6-7 years, we have a huge increase of the drug market-related violence in most of the EU member states. And that's a major difference because 10 years ago, when we talked about drug-related violence, we were talking about Central America. Now it's a bit everywhere in the European Union.
While Hosdale believes that the EU has successfully responded to the challenge posed by heroin, he feels that the 27 member states are lagging behind in tackling the rise in cocaine use.
Where we are not ready at all for the moment is, as we see the last 7-8 years, a huge increase in the availability of cocaine and the indirect indications that there is a huge increase in cocaine use. We know that it takes more or less 10 to 12 years between the moment a person starts consuming cocaine and the moment they will need to ask for help for the first time, which is usually not successful the first time. And here we don't have yet standard treatment protocols with the same level of efficacy that we have for existing substitution treatments.
Alexis Hosdale is referring to a proliferation of substances over the last 10 years, which requires a more complex public response. He calls on governments not only to fight traffickers, but also to find ways to protect citizens.
Today, Henrik Schober helps out at the Rosa Luxemburg High School in Berlin. Usually he teaches political science at a university, but because the German teacher of Class 7-2 is away on a class trip, he is standing in front of the students and has brought along a lesson on fake news for them.
Fälschungen werden immer besser und deswegen geht es natürlich auch für uns darum, dass wir so ein bisschen uns also zum einen anschauen, was sind Fälschungen und wie erkennt man Fälschungen, aber halt auch so drüber nachdenken, warum gibt es die eigentlich und was soll damit bezweckt werden.
Practical knowledge, the students like that.
Es haben wir auch was Nützliches gehabt und wenn jetzt eine Vertretungslehrerin gekommen wäre, hätten wir, glaube ich, irgendwie einen Film geguckt oder sowas, was halt uns später nichts mehr geholfen hätte.
Wir hatten keinen Ausfall, obwohl das auch natürlich toll wäre, aber es hat mir auch Spaß gemacht.
Also ich fand es spannend, weil es wird später im Leben was bringen und man hat halt gelernt, wie man zum Beispiel jetzt Fake News erkennt.
The lesson is organized by the donation-funded startup Life Teach Us. Using an app, volunteers can suggest topics and step in when lessons are cancelled. By now, more than 300 schools across Germany are participating, and the trend is rising.
Die Arbeit, die wir machen, kommt extrem gut an. Also wir merken, dass sich sehr viele Eltern selber auch engagieren. Von den Schülerinnen und Schülern ist das Feedback extrem gut, weil sie einfach sagen, hey, das ist Wissen, das brauchen wir, das bekommen wir so im Fachunterricht nicht. Und selbst die Lehrkräfte bestätigen unsere Arbeit und sagen halt, das Wissen, was ihr habt, das kann ich gar nicht selber haben, weil da fehlt mir einfach die Berufserfahrung oder ich habe halt nur die Ahnung in meinem jeweiligen Fach.
A welcome relief. In Berlin alone, about 21,000 lessons are cancelled every week without replacement. In other parts of the country, the situation is similarly strained.
O que está acontecendo aqui?
Senhora Tereza, dona da casa? É uma homenagem do governo.
Homenagem?
É, por conta da sua idade.
Mas desde quando uma pessoa é homenageada só porque ficou velha?
Abordagem de documentos.
Ainda falta 3 anos.
A senhora precisa comparecer na prefeitura com urgência.
Eu vou ter que andar no catavélio.
Mas você não já sabia que tu ia pra colônia?
Eu não sabia que era agora. Tem coisa que eu ainda quero fazer.
É daquela senhorinha que veio no Mereço Lavar.
E a senhora? Tá indo fazer o que lá em Taquatioca?
Garantir meu lugar no céu.
Para que é dinheiro?
Eu vou comprar liberdade antes de ser preso. Será que dá medo de voar lá em cima?
Quanto mais medo, melhor.
Você não tem medo da polícia, não?
Ninguém pode fazer nada comigo.
Deixe ninguém travar seu caminho, não.
Dizem que ele tem poder de encanto. Tu vai ver o que tu nunca viu.